Hello folks, Alex here. This is Alex Unabridged, and yes, it's nearly time for me to face my fears. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. So I'll start by asking you a question. Do you have any books that you really want to read, but you're actually kind of too scared to start? Because I do. I have quite a long list of books that have intrigued me, that have been on my list for ages, but I'm kind of nervous about, and I keep putting off and putting off and putting off. Some of them are because they are too scary, potentially, or disturbing books, horror books, or even non-horror fiction, literary fiction, or anything else that have themes in that are going to potentially be a bit much for you, or are going to be very difficult for you to read about. Maybe it's something that's non-fiction that is talking about events or themes or anything like that, that again it will be difficult for you to read. Or maybe you've got a book that's daunting for you to read, a classic that you're not sure whether you'll be able to kind of manage to get through, or something where you really want to read it but you're not sure if you'll understand it, and you don't want to end up feeling stupid, things like that. I've got one or two of those on my list. For any reason whatsoever, do you have anything that you've been putting off because you're a little scared of, you're a little daunted by? Yes, I have a massive list of these things, and for this October, for Halloween, spooky season, rather than doing yet more horror, seeing as I read horror all year round, I'm going to face my fears in this way instead, and I'm going to finally read some of these books that I have put off for whatever reason. This is very much a personal project for me. I've been building this list for a while now, and this is in place of Halloween, as I say. I'm not making this an official event, booktube event, so to speak. But I thought I would open it up and see if anybody wants to join me for what Mr. Troy Tradup nicknamed Traum October, and face your fears with me. And then, you'd be more than welcome to do that. And whether you've got one book which, terrifies you or daunts you or what have you, or many, you are more than welcome to join me. And hopefully strength in numbers and all that. Might help us get through it. So if you are interested in joining me in this project, do let me know in the comments. If there are enough people who fancy getting on board with this, then I'll set up a little Discord group or something like that, and we can all chat in a little support group and either celebrate our victories over our feared books, or commiserate when we have to DNF things. So why am I doing this then? I've got this list of books, and I've just, been scouring my shelves and just thinking, I haven't touched that, I haven't looked at that. I've bought it with all good intentions, and I've been putting stuff off. I say some of them is because they're horrors with elements that I know I find particularly difficult. Some are extreme horrors that I think I will find very disturbing, possibly too disturbing. Some are books with potential triggers for me, so ordinarily something that I wouldn't necessarily be too scared of in terms of the story, but there are themes in it. For me, it's trans stuff. I find it very difficult to read things about trans experiences, especially if there's any kind of negative experiences, or anything difficult within there. That's it's a trigger for me. And there's stuff, as I say, that I'm scared that I won't understand, and that I'll end up feeling stupid, which is a silly thing, I know, which is a silly reason. You shouldn't feel stupid if you don't understand something. It might just not be for you. But that's one of those things. So, you know, I have something on the list for that as well. And as I say, there are some non-fiction books which are about pretty horrific events in history, which I know are important to read about and be aware of what has happened in the past. That's how we learn, and that's how we hopefully stop things happening, similar things happening in the future, or recognise, you know, warning signs. But I know that there'll be potentially extremely difficult reads. One reason why I want to do this is because I recently started reading shark books about sharks, and books with sharks in them. And I have a terrible phobia of sharks. I'm awful with certainly anything visual. I can't, you know, pictures of sharks do scare the hell out of me, and moving images, oh no, absolutely not. That's nightmare fuel straight away. But I wanted to read Jaws, and I've wanted to read Meg and things like that, and I thought, do you know what, I'm going to try one and see how I go. And for whatever reason, my brain senses the imagery when I read stuff like that, so that I don't get too scared. I can be just scared enough. And I've really enjoyed it, and it has actually helped lessen the fear of sharks, the visual fear, by reading, just by kind of, I guess, you know, being more involved with it and being sort of slightly open to it. So that, as I say, that has actually helped lessen that fear a little bit. I can now look at a still image of a shark without getting the kind of the racing heartbeat and just feeling very anxious and, you know, not nice. I can actually, you know, I can deal with that. It doesn't affect me in the same way. So, you know, obviously just kind of almost desensitizing myself a little bit through reading has helped with that, with managing that fear. And I think, you know, often you read stuff and you might think it's going to be scarier than it actually is. It's kind of almost, the fear is built up just through your anticipation of it, when actually you just get on with the thing and read it, or whatever it is, anything, you know, that you're scared to do or something. Often when you're in the situation and you're dealing with it, it's not actually as scary as you thought it was. So I think I thought I'll give these books a go, and hopefully I'll be able to face these fears and kind of move on with them, and not be quite so hesitant over things potentially in the future. So yeah, hopefully these will deal with some of my anxieties, or help me kind of face some of these anxieties and fears. Or maybe they won't, and maybe I'll be more scared than ever. Who knows? It'll be kill or cure, won't it, really? So what have I picked for the month then, and why? So this is in the order of priority in which I am going to read these. First up is Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin. This is a post-apocalyptic novel, horror, and this follows trans women and men on a grotesque journey of survival, and there is quite a lot of extreme transphobia in this. And, you know, just I think there's probably a lot of discussion of things like potentially dysphoria and stuff like that, and I know that that is going to be a trigger, and I know that the transphobia is definitely going to be extremely difficult to read. But I really want to read this. This is by a trans author. This is, you know, a trans author who is angry at the state of things in our world, and has kind of, you know, poured that into this book. And I think it's important for me to read it, and I want to read it. I want to support all the, you know, trans authors, and so I'm gonna have that on an audiobook, and I'm gonna see how I fare with that. But yeah, I know that that one's going to be potentially extremely difficult. Next up is The Troop by Nick Cutter. I really like the sound of this in the most part. You know, it's Boy Scouts trapped on an island with, I think, potentially, I don't know whether it's a virus or something like that, but something that, you know, isn't nice, that kind of spreads, and it's a story of survival. But I know that this has some animal cruelty in it, which is one of the things in horror for me that is extremely difficult for me to read, that really upsets me. And I think there's quite a bit of body horror in this. And although I like body horror, I have a limit. It depends on what it is and how it's done. Sometimes it's just too much for me. So yeah, this is one I'd say I've had this on my list for ages and ages, and I keep putting off reading. So that is one that I think, I just need to try it. If I don't like it, I can put it down. No harm done. Then I've got some potentially extreme horror and disturbing horror, and that is The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. Again, this is another one that I'm intrigued by. It's this kind of morbid curiosity on this one. It's, I think it's based on, or certainly very much inspired by, a true story of, I think it's a couple of girls who are essentially held captive by somewhat deranged mad aunt and her sons, and it's torture essentially. It's these girls are tortured, and I think it's pretty extreme. And it's children doing the torturing as well, and egged on by this horrible aunt, and it's one that pops up on every disturbing books list that I see. And as I say, it's kind of morbid curiosity, and I'm interested in the premise, and I but it's one that I've kept putting off because it does sound pretty horrific. So for this project, that's the point of this project. Try some of the stuff that I'm a bit about. So we'll give it a go. Next up is something that my wife has been recommending that I read for ages, and that is The Cement Garden by Ian McEwan. This is her copy that she's had on the shelf. It's a good short one, this one. But I know that this, again, has some pretty disturbing themes in it. I think there's incest in here, and again, it's children and stuff with children. It can be, I don't have kids, but there's it's something about the vulnerability of children and youngsters that I do find very difficult to read. Stuff that has negative stuff in it. Whether it's abuse or what have you. So I say my wife's been on at me to read this for ages. She loves Ian McEwan, so I will give that one a go. Then I've got a non-fiction book, and this will be an audiobook on Kindle. This happens to be on Audible Plus catalogue, and this is the Rape of Nanking by Arish Chang. And this looks at the a brutal massacre, basically, in China in 1937, when the Japanese army swept in to the city of Nanking, and not only kind of looted and burned the town to the ground, essentially, the city to the ground, but they also systematically raped, tortured, and murdered more than 300,000 Chinese civilians. And it's one of those events in history that I hadn't got a clue that this had even taken place until reasonably recently, as in the last few years, when I happened to see something about it on a documentary. And the documentary wasn't about that, it was referenced. I went, what? And so looked it up and put this on my list. But yeah, it's one of those where I know that this is going to be a hard read. It's going to be a really hard read. So that's a non-fiction, which I think could be, there's going to be some horrific stuff in there, let's face it. But it's something that I think I should know about, that I should be informed about. Okay, next up, change of pace. We've got Naked Lunch by William S. Burroughs, and this is a classic by Burroughs, classic 20th century literature, of an unnerving tale of a narcotics addict unmoored in New York, Tangiers, and ultimately a nightmarish wasteland known as Interzone. And this is the one that I've got on the list that I am nervous to read because I'm not sure whether I'll understand it or not. And I don't want to feel stupid if I don't. And I know that's a really silly thing to think, but that's just how my brain works. I don't want to feel dumb if I don't understand it. But it's transgressive fiction, and by all accounts it's written in quite a bizarre style. So I'll just have to give it a go and see what I think, and see how I get on with it, and not beat myself up if I don't understand it. Then I've got an ebook, a very short ebook, Horror, which is a sincere warning about the entity in your home by Jason Arnott. And I picked this up recently. I'd heard about it a while ago. And this is written like a letter to you, the reader, from a previous occupant of your house. And I think this is a fantastic idea. I love this idea. And I love the fact that there's a deluxe edition that you can buy, you know, for yourself or for someone else, that is handwritten and addresses you directly, you know, and you know, really does make it sound like it's, you know, your house. But yeah, I think just because I think if it's done well, this might be nightmare fuel. And not many books are nightmare fuel for me, like really you know, the ones on this list are potentially the nightmare fuel ones. But majority of horror books, no, they're not too bad. I can deal with it. But this could be, just the idea of it could make me a little bit jumpy when I'm up on my own at night. And so yeah, I'm just kind of, I'm apprehensive of that one. And then the final one, if I get a chance to get to it, will be Cujo by Stephen King. And that is because I struggle with anything about dogs in horror. Anything where the dog might get hurt or killed, I will shy away from. And of course, Cujo is about, I mean, the dog is the horror in this, in a lot of ways. But you know, it's a Stephen King book about a rabid dog. It's not going to end well for the dog, is it? That in itself has what's made me not read it up to now. So if I get time in the month, then I will read Cujo. So that is my list. I don't know whether I'll get through it all. As I say, that is the kind of the TBR order. So that I can kind of prioritise on the ones I want to get to first. But yeah, so that is my project for October. As I say, if you have a book that you're a bit too scared to read, or daunted to read, or what have you, and want to read it, as you know, read it and discuss in a support group with me during October, then do let me know. As I say, this is not an official event, this is my personal project, but I'm more than happy to have other people jump on board. And likewise, if there's any of the books on my list that you also would really like to read but are a bit apprehensive about doing so, do let me know if you fancy a buddy read, or if there's more than one person, then we can group read, something like that. You know, again, as I say, strength in numbers. So that is it from me today. I will be updating you obviously throughout the month with the Face Your Fears project books as I get to them. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider giving me a like and subscribing for more content coming very soon. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.